Did PlayStation just admit that Xbox was right? What's up, y'all? I'm Ray, and this is my channel, Xbox Ready, where we get on and we talk about Xbox stuff. The latest news, rumors, games, accessories, pretty much anything I want to talk about, as long as it's about Xbox in some way. I'm really excited because, well, I am not as close to the camera today as I usually am. Usually my face is like right up on this thing, like maybe get a little chest, maybe, but right now I'm backing off a little bit. Thanks for the feedback, guys. Now, back in 2020, when the Series X and S launched, people had high expectations for these Xbox consoles. Sure, they had some stumbles out the gate, but surely this was the year that Microsoft could go toe-to-toe with Sony in terms of console sales, have ourselves a proper console war like back in the 360 generation. PlayStation 4's outselling Xbox Ones at a 2-to-1 ratio. That was just a fluke. With the Xbox Series X and S, they were gonna get right back on track. 6 years later, and there's only a minor problem with that. People aren't buying Xbox consoles, not in the way that they used to. And that goes for even some of their best performing markets. Over here in the US, after 4 straight years of declining hardware sales, Xbox had record low console sales for November 2025. And I'm talking record lows, like for as long as Xbox has been around. They were infamously outsold by this Kinect knockoff console on Black Friday, and social media has not let up about it. And yes, the United States, historically, Xbox's most popular, biggest market, but it can't be bad all over, right? Here's the thing though, they're also experiencing historically bad sales in their second biggest market, the United Kingdom. According to games journalist Christopher Dring, sales over in the UK for Xbox hardware are down 39% year over year, making it comfortably the worst year on record for Xbox consoles. With the return of favorite Xbox franchises in 2026, might things improve? I mean, this is about the millionth time that we've seen this headline, except now, instead of it being in the US, it's focused on the United Kingdom. And for all this doom and gloom, it honestly kind of seems like Microsoft doesn't care. And if you look through the replies in this tweet, there's some pretty interesting people weighing in on this. In response to Chris's initial question, are things going to turn around? Are people going to buy Xbox hardware in 2026 with the return of these big name franchises like Fable and Gears? And Jez Corden, Mr. Windows Central, Mr. Xbox 2 himself, says, nope, and it's intentional. This guy then asks, okay, so what's the game plan, Jez? And he flat out says they're trying to move devs to PC, sell the Xbox PC console hybrid that we know right now as Project Magnus in a boutique kind of way, a la the Surface, and work with OEMs to make Xbox PCs, sort of like what we saw with Asus and the Xbox Ally handhelds. So yes, these sales numbers are historically bad, but honestly, it makes sense if you've been following anything that Xbox has been doing over the past even 6 months. If Xbox is moving more aggressively into the PC space with the full screen experience, going toe-to-toe with Valve there, and they're also putting out this Xbox PC console hybrid more like a PC versus a traditional console with Project Magnus next generation, why would they bother investing more time and resources into the Xbox Series X and S, especially at this point where they're having to raise the prices and people just aren't buying them? The Xbox teams can collectively move on from the Series X and S, as sad as I am to say that. And honestly, this is something that they've done before. This is exactly what they did from going from the Xbox to the Xbox 360 generation. Peter Moore himself has talked specifically about how they cut the cord early on that OG Xbox so they could transition into technology they thought was the future of gaming, specifically HD gaming, online play with Xbox Live. So rather than mess around with that, push sales of the OG Xbox, they were like, okay, let's just move on to the 360. And in that case, it worked out for them. They struck while the iron was hot and were able to get in on the ground floor of some really revolutionary stuff that we hadn't seen before, specifically Xbox Live. That's why there was only a 4-year gap between the original Xbox launching and the 360 launching in 2005. They also did it again, going from the 360 to the Xbox One, leaving room for PlayStation 3s to finally overtake them in sales. Except that time, they had all of the wrong instincts. They were like, yeah, gaming is going to be like this thing where everyone integrates all of their entertainment into one little box. People are gonna love it. People are gonna want to work out with their Xboxes, just like they did with the Wii. So while all of their instincts were pretty much dead on going from Xbox to Xbox 360, it was the complete opposite going from the 360 to the Xbox One, and they really haven't been the same since. Sometimes Xbox chases a trend and it works out, like with Xbox Live. Other times it doesn't, like with the Kinect and all of this other crazy stuff that they were trying on the Xbox One generation. But they might be onto something this time around. Right now, the focus is on Xbox, obviously, but the truth is that console sales are down across the board. And yes, that includes the PS5 and Switch 2 consoles. And before I go any further, I'm not here to do any whataboutism. Oh, Xbox is having a bad time, a bad year in terms of sales, but what about PlayStation? PlayStation sales are down 40% year over year, but they're not experiencing historically bad lows like Xbox is seeing. And the PlayStation 5, let's just keep it real, it's on track to become one of the most popular PlayStations right behind the PS2, the best-selling console of all time. And you know what? While we're on the topic of PlayStation, I want to go ahead and revisit some comments made by Shawn Layden maybe a couple months ago. If you're watching this channel, you probably know who this dude is already, but if you don't, he is the former CEO and president of Sony Interactive Entertainment. And interestingly enough, it's widely believed that he left because of Sony's pivot to live service gaming, which in hindsight was probably a great move. It wasn't even a couple of months ago, it was a couple of weeks ago. He was on this YouTube channel and he was breaking down every console generation, how many collective consoles are sold. And every generation, no matter what time period or decade that we're in, it always works out to more or less 250 million consoles sold collectively from all of the platforms. Xboxes, PlayStations, Nintendos. For some weird reason, it always works out to around that 250 million mark. There was an exception when the Nintendo Wii came out. That was like the peak of people buying video game consoles. We got all the way up to 300 million, but in subsequent generations, it came on back down to earth to that 250 million number. He attributes that to the fact that a lot of non-gamers were buying Wii consoles to either work out with them or just like buying them to connect with their kids. I don't know. Or even for the novelty of it. Like people loved the freaking motion sensors. Xbox loved it, so they bet all their money on the Kinect. And clearly it was just not a trend that had any staying power. So he's talking about, okay, every console generation, 250 million consoles, give or take, are sold. How can we get beyond that? How can we crack that number? And he believes that the secret lies in lessons learned from the VHS battle in the 1970s to 1980s. Now, this is before my time. I don't know anything about this home tape war. I remember VHSs. I had a wide collection of a bunch of Disney tapes, and I remember recording stuff on them. And I remember recording like Dragon Ball Z episodes, like the Trunks saga, like recording that. I can't miss that, even though I have to go to karate. But I guess before VHS was the dominant form of home movie and television recording and viewing, there was Betamax. And Shawn says that ultimately Betamax lost to VHS for one reason and one reason only, that VHS licensed its format across many different manufacturers. Sony held the unique Betamax patent trademark in everything. There was a license we did with Toshiba towards the end of the life cycle, but it never went wide like VHS. So how does that relate to the video game industry? Well, he goes on to say, I think we need to get in a world where we have a gaming format similar to what people were able to do with VHS back in the day. Maybe it just comes from PC. Maybe we find a way just to do it all in Linux and kernel or something. And then we have a consortium around that. We have licensing programs which allow other manufacturers to build that space. But right now, I think we're trapped in this containment field. So in this weird roundabout way, Shawn Layden, without explicitly saying it, is kind of endorsing what Xbox and Microsoft are doing in the console space. Because let's be honest, what does the VHS licensing out their name to other manufacturers so they can get a broader reach and expand their market share? Who does that sound like right now when you're thinking about PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox? That's Xbox. That's literally what they're doing. They license out their name to Asus to make the Xbox Ally handhelds. And while this isn't a one-to-one comparison, they're making sure that their products are compatible on a wide range of devices, not just on the Xbox consoles, but through cloud gaming on Hisense TVs. They just dropped that update, phones, tablets, gaming PCs. So realistically, Xbox is at this point where they could maybe fight to get a little bit more of that pie, that 250 million cap that we're seeing. Even if they poured all of the money that Microsoft is spending on AI right now into trying to get a little bit of ground in that 250 million pie, maybe they can get a little bit more, but they're not going to get all of it. And that is a massive dump of resources compared to the things that they're doing right now, expanding onto multiple platforms, yes, including PlayStation, and partnering up with companies like Asus to make their own Xbox consoles, or sort of Xbox consoles. You know what I mean. And this is also ignoring the fact that while console sales are declining for everyone, console prices are also increasing for everyone. Again, the focus has been on Xbox because they've had the sharpest increase out of the three. But PlayStation has raised their prices. They're expecting another price hikes to PlayStation 5s. We know that certain components in the Switch 2, they're going up in price. You have to imagine that's going to trickle down to consumers. And in the midst of all this craziness and bad press that Xbox has going on for itself right now, micro slop, no one is talking about the work that Xbox teams are doing to make sure that you don't have to buy a $650 Series X in order to play their games. I'm not saying this is how Xbox planned it. I'm not saying that this is how we wanted this generation to go. Back in 2021, when Xbox Ready first started, I was making those videos of like, oh, Xbox Series X and S closing that gap on the PlayStation 5 in terms of sales this month, outselling in certain markets, analyzing those numbers. That was me. I was there, I get it. But even through all this craziness, and as much as I love my Series X, my Series S, I still think there are some positives to be taken away as Xbox forges ahead into this new direction. It might be a bumpy ride for a little bit. It'll definitely extend these growing pains that Xbox is going through as a brand. And the DRAM shortage, the SSD shortage, that's not going to help things. But if they play their cards right, even though Xbox may not look like the brand we knew back in the day with the 360, I still think that they can deliver gamers a really cool experience, especially if they nail these upcoming projects in 2026, like Fable, like Gears E-Day, like Campaign Evolved, Forza Horizon 6, Clockwork Revolution, all those games I've spent the past few weeks talking about. In a way, it kind of pulls their focus back to what really matters. If hardware is getting more expensive to manufacture, to sell, then focus on what we really want, the software and the games. Make sure these games coming out in 2026, the ones that we're all hyped for, make sure that they're absolutely masterpieces. With the next Xbox, Project Magnus set to be more like a PC versus a traditional console, there's a lot of talk about, oh, Xbox is going back to their roots. Oh, they're going back to the days where they were working hard on the 11 APIs that made up DirectX and then later went on to become the Xbox, this console built around PC architecture versus like completely different hardware and parts specifically designed for a console. Yes, they're going back to their roots with the PC side of things, but Microsoft needs to stop being micro slop and go back to what they have done, what makes them money, the development of software. That's what they're known for. It's in the name. Now they have a chance to make this really dope-ass interface with the full screen experience. They got a good start, but they gotta take it even further than that. And for the love of God, at least with the full screen experience right now, they're not shoehorning AI or Copilot into it right now. Copilot is lurking in the game bar, if you pull that up, but it's not as obnoxious as, all of the other places that we're seeing Copilot pop up in. For as long as you can, leave the AI out of it. I mean, I know it's coming because they have the NPU in the Xbox Ally X, and they're talking about leveraging AI in order to pre-compile shaders and implement super max resolution. But in terms of the menu navigation and any other aspect that isn't just like explicitly gameplay or making my gameplay experience better or look better, just don't even bother. And imagine what they can do if they get the full screen experience, name it something cooler, and make it something that's on par with SteamOS. That'll really be something that they can leverage in the way that Shawn Layden's talking about when he was discussing the whole VHS domination over Betamax. Xbox can partner up with these people and be like, yo, you can make an Xbox powered by this cool freaking interface that we got, full screen experience as a placeholder name. We're gonna name it something better, I promise. And that'll serve them a lot better in terms of spreading their influence versus just banging their head against the wall with selling consoles, especially as they're increasing in price. Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff I got to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready. If you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.